Hey, this is John Sadak, TV voice of the Cincinnati Reds, and you're up for Late Night Reds Talk.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to a very special edition of Late Night Reds Talk. Not live this time, I guess. With Nick being on vacation this week, we decided we were going to put something up that we recorded a few weeks ago. So Carlos is not with us, but it is me, Tim Daniel, as always, with Mr. Nick Kirby himself. How are you, man?
I'm good. What's going on? When you're watching this, I'm on vacation, but I'm here right now. So,
yes.
Woo.
So since Nick's on vacation, we obviously can't cover what's going on the week of the Cubs series and the Marlins homestand while he's gone, but we will this episode's going to be kind of just a little fun, shooting the shit and kind of talking the history of one of our favorite players of all time. We're going to kind of go through remembering, all the things we love, and this, as he's still currently slugging the way that we remember of Joey Votto, and kind of go through his career and his career arc and just what we remember about him coming up and, through the great years, the MVP years, the Reds playoff years, and just everything he's been able to do. And the years he should have won MVP that he didn't, not to bring up any sore subjects by any means. But Nick, I know for you and I, this is, obviously Carlos has a very close relationship with Joey Votto. So for him, it's a little different than how we look at him as guys who, grew up loving the Reds and, we're in the same age group. So we've gotten to see his whole career, and we've gotten to see him be pretty amazing. And the best part about it is, not like when we were kids and Peyton Manning and Tom Brady could come up, we saw their careers. Like, this is something we, like, as adults, starting to really understand the game of baseball more than just like, I like this player and I like that player. This was kind of like the guy for us.
Yeah, I mean, the Reds have had, two Hall of Fame players in my lifetime, Barry Larkin and Joey Votto. But the difference between Votto and Larkin in terms of fandom for someone like, our age, Votto came up, I think I was 20 years old when he came up. So like Votto's been like a Cincinnati Red, like my entire adult life.
Yeah.
And when it's hard to appreciate a Hall of Fame like caliber player when you're a kid. I didn't watch every Reds game when I was a kid. Every Reds game wasn't even on,
right.
Whereas, I memean, I've probably watched 90% of Joey Votto's games. It's probably terrifying for people, but yeah, I mean, like this is our guy. Like, I've watched him every single day, and it's just there'll never be another Joey Votto, and I don't know, there's no guarantee the Reds will have another Hall of Fame player.
Right.
We hope they have several more, but there's other franchises that would go decades and decades and decades without having a Hall of Fame caliber player. So, we're going to kind of go through, of course, his whole career, but for Reds fans, and I'm sure most people listening to this are with me on this, but man, appreciate these last couple years you're going to have with Joey Votto, because you're never going to have another one like that. And you might not have another Hall of Fame caliber player for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, like for teams to go just decades and decades, like the Brewers are a perfect example after Paul Molitor. You couldn't make the case for Ryan Braun, but obviously with his MVP year and the questions about, testing positive, I think that his Hall of Fame resume is probably out the door. I don't necessarily know if Christian Yelich has done enough to earn the possibility of going to Cooperstown. So yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Of course, I say that. We know how this goes every time I say something about another players.
We love you, Christian.
Brewers.
We love you. We love you.
You're great.
You're a great player.
Yes.
On base king, man.
But I think that, it's been really special. And the coolest thing about Joey Votto that I really appreciated is, not necessarily, I always felt like he kind of got like, did you ever see 61?
Yeah.
Okay. So I've always felt like, and it's pretty well known, like that's pretty accurate as far as how Yankee fans treated Roger Maris. I always feel like Votto was treated that same way with Cincinnati for a lot of his career, where it was, well, he's hitting third in the order and, he's making all this money and he's got to be driving in runs, when it's like, I don't give a shit. Like, I'm going to do what I want to do and I'm going to help my team win my way. And guess what? He has for a long time. So, I think too, the other thing is, as Joey was coming up through the minors in this organization, he was definitely, I wouldn't say overshadowed, because he did win, he was a Futures Game MVP. was definitely talked about, was definitely rumored in a lot of trades in the 2000s as far as like a prospect that could be moved. Him and Jay Bruce were, but he was kind of overshadowed by guys like Jay Bruce and Homer Bailey as he was coming up.
Yeah, that's a great point that you bring that up. I'll kind of segue into like as Joey Votto came in 2007 and kind of talk about kind of where I fit in and if anyone cares in my fandom and things like that. So I know I've told people before, I was a diehard Reds fan when I was a kid, like probably everyone in Cincinnati. And the Reds moved to cable, I think, in 2000, and my family didn't have cable, and so it really was hard for me to like keep an interest as a teenager, in a team where you can't watch them on TV. So I kind of fell out of touch with Reds baseball for most of the 2000s. It's funny thing is I actually went away to college. I went to school in Virginia. And in 2006 through 2008. And some of my best friends in college were big baseball fans. They were big Atlanta Braves fans. And for whatever reason, that kind of triggered me into like wanting to get back into baseball. And so I know I've written about this story before, but it's great. I think it's a decent parallel from what Tim was saying about how Joey was kind of overshadowed. When in 2008, I really wanted to come back and go to a baseball game first thing. And I just somehow miraculously lucked into it being Jay Bruce's debut. And, everyone knows how that night went. That night really was like the night, okay, yeah, I really want to get back into baseball. That pushed me back. That made me fall back in love with baseball. But I didn't really know who Joey Votto was. I mean, I'd kind of been like casually following the Reds, but like even during that 2008 season, you look at Votto, he had a pretty good year. He had a 125 OPS plus that year. But it was Jay Bruce was the guy. He was supposed to be the superstar, and it never turns out that way. Again, we've already talked on the show. We love Jay Bruce. Jay Bruce had a great career and deserves nothing but praise for his career. But that was supposed to be, Jay Bruce's thing. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, in Jay Bruce's debut, Votto batted 7th. I believe he definitely wasn't in the top of the order. And so that just kind of showed you where the Reds and where Dusty Baker thought that Joey Votto kind of fell, even though he came up 2007, had a really nice September. 2008 had a great year, but he was that not Jay Bruce.
Yeah, not to mention 2008, Joey Votto was a candidate for National League Rookie of the Year. He comes in second was it Giovanni Soto?
Yeah.
Yeah, mainly because the Cubs made the playoffs that year and the Reds didn't. But from that point, and I remember just kind of like, the city kind of getting behind, like, this guy's pretty good. And, if you go back to 2007 when he comes up, Scott Hatterberg was there. And that was kind of what was kind of keeping Joey down in Louisville for a while. I mean, coming off of 2006, Votto was the AA League MVP. We've joked on this show many times about the fact that in AA, he led the Chattanooga Lookouts in stolen bases. Actually was 5th in the league that year in stolen bases with 25. And, now obviously, no one really knows him to be necessarily fleet of foot. But, had that ability at that time, comes up and, spends some time in Louisville, obviously rakes down there, comes up with Cincinnati and, being behind Hatterberg, the Reds were trying to find a place to give him the order. There's video out there of Joey Votto playing left field at times. And, thank God he ended up being a first baseman.
Yeah. So Votto did bat 7th in that debut. He actually had 3 hits in Jay Bruce's debut. Kind of like a side note, like he had a great night too. He had an 883 OPS at that point, so he was doing really well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's just kind of that's kind of the interesting thing about kind of where Joey Votto's career started. That he was towards the bottom of the order, and then of course just had a great year, and then I think by the couple months later down the line he was batting I think 3rd for the majority of the rest of the year. But yeah,
and then just kind of having that feel finally of like, okay, we have, this young talent, these first basemen, because, it was him, it was Homer Bailey, it was Jay Bruce, obviously, like we talked about, and just kind of seeing the collective group and, where Nick was kind of talking about how he wasn't really into baseball at that time. In high school, my friends were really into baseball and they were like, hey, this Reds minor league system, they have like these prospects. These guys are going to be really good. Chris Dickerson came up at that time frame. He was a guy people were really high on to be an outfielder of the future and ended up being pretty good. So, yeah, and then you kind of go into that 08 year where he has a hell of a year. The Reds weren't necessarily very good that year. That's the year that Ken Griffey Jr. gets traded to the White Sox at the deadline. And
Dunn got traded too.
Dunn got traded to Arizona. I think people kind of forget that that's been a half season with the Diamondbacks.
Yeah, brought us back
Micah Owings
and Tom Brenneman.
Oh yeah. And then the Griffey trade was Nick Massett, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Or as we remember him, Nick Mass hits.
Hey, Nick Massett had an underrated career. He had some bad moments with the Reds, but I'd take a Nick Massett. I'd take a Nick Massett right now. I would have taken Nick Massett back in May. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's a good point. So they go to the 09 season. And I don't know if you really remember.
I'm sorry. Can I bring up one more point on 2008?
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I just don't want to like backtrack.
No.
Just something I'm kind of looking through as we kind of go along this. So Dusty Baker obviously was like a very big, like, if you were batting third in Dusty Baker's lineup, he didn't throw someone third. Like that was a big deal. Votto did not bat his first game third until game number 134 of the season. I don't know if he did in 2007 or not, but in 2008, not till 134, and he finished second in the Rookie of the Year vote.
Yeah, I guess when they traded Dunn and Griffey, that was when they're like, all right, we can bring you up in the order now. Yeah, because those guys weren't shells of themselves at that time. Actually, Dunn was still pretty good. I shouldn't say that. But yeah, and Griffey was an all-star the year before. But, they go to the 09 season, and it's like the second, they kind of are, they're a young core, but they can see they have something there. And fortunately, this is the part where Votto leaves the season earlier. Unfortunately, his dad passes, so he kind of took some time out. But do you remember like in 09, like just kind of seeing him and you're like, man, like this is pretty awesome.
Yeah, when Votto left the team, he had a 1,091 OPS, and probably most of our listeners, viewers, whatever, understand like OPS, but for those who might not, we'll use OPS probably a lot in this episode, just because it kind of is an easy place marker. Anything over 1,000 is really good. Like it's probably like the equivalent of hitting like 350 if you're looking at batting average. So he was close to 1,100, which is like that's like 400 hitter almost. It's kind of like equivalent. So like when he left that team, man, he was just killing it. Like, and I think maybe that kind of gets lost a little bit, was just how, and he was dealing with so much too, and he was still producing at that just incredible level.
Yeah, I think it's too. That was kind of really before. To think about like that time frame, we're in a point now where you see athletes like really speak openly about like mental health and things like that. We didn't have that a lot back then.
Yeah.
So that was like pretty, it was really not that it was cool, because obviously it's a tragedy, it's a terrible situation, but it was impressive to see an athlete that was openly to be like, I gotta go do my thing for a little while. I'll be back. But and that was something that was pretty neat. Just to kind of see that someone was brave enough to like do that at the time when baseball wasn't really kind of like acknowledging that a whole lot. So that was great. And that was something that we saw that he did, obviously. And he comes back. They trade for Scott Rowland because they're like, maybe next year this team can compete. Drew Stubbs comes up and everyone's pretty high on him. I thought he was going to be a superstar. I thought for sure he was going to be a superstar.
We all did.
Yeah. Ryan Hannigan's up at that time. So you can see this young Reds group finally coming up and like getting their feet wet, and kind of Votto leading the way as Scott Rowland comes in. And you kind of really start to see this team kind of make a turn towards like, oh man, they're not too far away from being pretty good.
Yeah. For real. They were, 18-9 in September of 2009. So, I know momentum is a very overrated thing,
Yes.
but I do think, that team definitely really started changing the trajectory of the franchise late in that year. And yeah, I think it's a great point that you brought up about how, when that happened to Votto, that was not a normal thing to talk about, which is a shame, of course. But I thought Votto, when he came back, he did like a sit down interview. I think it was with George Brand. And that was the introverted Joey Votto. That was not the Joey Votto we see and we love today. And he was very, very brave and just sat down and talked about it. And he could have just said, hey, I had this vertigo issues, but they probably could have swept it under the rug, really, to be honest. But yeah, I like to think maybe that helped change was one of the many, players that have been brave and stepped up and spoken out, and has kind of changed how that's viewed. It. To Cincinnati's credit, I don't feel like Joey Votto, for the most part, out of a few dumb, loud voices, I feel like most people, even in 2009, this wasn't our superstar Joey Votto yet, still was pretty understanding for that time frame.
Yeah, I think what was the coolest thing was, so I was working at a store called Cardboard Heroes at the time, which was like a sporting goods apparel store. We sold jerseys and stuff like that. And we could not keep Joey Votto jerseys on the shelves, man. Like, it was like pretty cool because, at that time, like we've said multiple times, the show, it was Jay Bruce. You already heard about. He was minor league player of the year. We can't wait for him to come up. Homer Bailey was the pitcher that started in the Futures game. But people were like, hey, do you guys have Votto jerseys? And we would fly through them. So I was like, all right, cool. Like, you see like a cornerstone here. And then when the Roland trade comes in, you have Roland there to kind of show him more taking that next step and just how big that was for Joey's career. Like you said, they go 18-9. And we go into the offseason kind of thinking like, this team could be pretty darn good. Obviously, they signed a role to Chapman. I didn't even mention, the fact that Johnny Cueto was, coming into his own still at that time. And there's the Josh Hamilton year, obviously, that moves on to brings the Edinson Volquez, who was an all-star for a year. So Votto kind of leading the way into this 2010 season where there were still some older guys there. Like I think Aaron Harang started opening day that year against St. Louis.
Yeah.
But you saw like him, and you saw Ramon Hernandez comes over, and he ends up being really big for this team. And just kind of seeing like them getting that veteran core to help these young guys as they get forward. And Votto, kind of like I said, being the center of it. Johnny Gomes had some crazy stretch that year where he was super good, like hitting behind Votto. So like that 2010 team is, although we know how the season ended, was definitely one of my favorite teams. And obviously, we'll get into that quite a bit, but that was, Votto's MVP year.
Yeah, the 2010 team would be, if there's one team that would be my most favorite Reds team since this current one, it'd be the 2010. Like that's probably as far back as I'd go if was ranking. And I don't know, I might like this current team more than the
I did
2010 team. I don't know. Jury's still out on that. That 2010 team was so stinking fun. And Joey Votto was just larger than life that year. I go back in that season, there's so many memories from that season that stick out, but the one that for Votto that sticks out is, so the Reds are down 6-3 in the ninth against the Phillies. It's a regular season game. Brad Lidge is the closer for the Phillies, lights out closer, one of the best in the game. Reds are at the bottom of their order, and they get a guy on base, and like I was in the stadium, and like everyone is like, all right, hey, can they get to Joey? Can they get Joey to the plate? And they get Joey to the plate with 2 outs. And sure enough, he has a 3-run bomb. And like, Joey Votto, like in 2009, he had like, I think a 980 OPS. In 2010, he was just destroying it, even at that point. But when he hit that 3-run homer, it's just like, that felt like the moment to me that I was like, oh, wow, this guy is on another level. This isn't just a really, really good player. This isn't like, and I love Adam Dunn to death, and I hope no one takes this wrong, but like Adam Dunn's a great player, but Adam Dunn didn't feel like that. That's right. That's kind of when Joey Votto, I think, separated from like the Adam Dunn level player, at least for me. And it's probably completely, hyperbole and over exaggeration from one moment. But that one moment for me, that was the Joey Votto moment. And man, I can watch that. Tom actually had a phenomenal call of that home run, and they lost the game, but it was just, oh man, it's just such an incredible moment.
It's so funny you bring up that Philly series because I was at the game the next day. They played a day game, and Hal they pitched.
Yeah,
They were down 2-1 going into the 7th, and Bruce hit a homer in the 7th to tie the game, and Votto hit a homer in the 8th to take the lead, and they won in the 9th 3-2. And I just remember like that was kind of my like, all right, we got something here. Like this is the guy. And just kind of like you started like reading the reports at the time. You're like a little couple months later, it's like, could Joey Votto potentially be the MVP? Is this a guy that's going to get challenged for that? Because you got to think like at that time in the National League, Albert Pujols was still on top of the world. Lance Berkman was terrific. There's 100 names I could list that were just awesome in National League players. So for us to kind of have like our guy, Chase Utley was tremendous that year for the Phillies, which is kind of another name. But and Hanley Ramirez was gaining steam. So yeah, like I said, I could name a ton of dudes. But for us to kind of have our guy here and kind of like be the guy of the future was really cool. I think one of the moments that really sticks out from that year, especially, is later in the year. He kind of had that little brief slump in September, and they're playing the Pirates, and he doesn't even start the Saturday night game. He comes in and pinch hits at the bottom of the ninth. It's a walk-off homer. And like, that's one of those moments I was like, all right, this is fucking cool.
That was, I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to be nice and not say anything mean, but that was the Pete Rose night, wasn't it? That was the first night he was back on the field.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a huge crowd, and
I think it was Memorial Day weekend because they were wearing the special hats.
Labor Day.
Labor Day. Yeah.
Yeah. Labor Day weekend. Yeah.
I get those mixed up all the time.
Yeah. Memorial Day is not in September. But yeah, that was it. I remember, I won't say where I was at that night, but yeah, I remember where I was, and just one of those just incredible moments from just an incredible season, an incredible fun team that overachieved and just did won so many crazy games, lost so many crazy games. You think that team had that the Braves game where they blew that 8-0 lead. There's a lot of parallels between the 2010 team and the 2021 team in some ways.
I will never forget watching the ball bounce off Lance Nick's glove and going over the wall. I will just never forget that moment.
We should have asked Mo Ager when he was on the air. We should have mentioned that to him because that was the first time I actually ever met Mo. My buddies, we went to the Cincinnati Cyclones playoff game that night, and their brother was friends with Mo, and so I remember saying hi to him then. And I remember Mo. They said, "Oh, hey, Nick, he's a big baseball fan," because my friends weren't big baseball fans, and Mo, and we just both shook our heads what happened, and then they go and they win the next day, and everything's fine.
All's forgiven.
Baseball,
Yeah, I don't remember. Okay, so the deadline that year, they got Willie Bloomquist later in the year, but I don't remember if they really made any other big moves necessarily in 2010 that jump off the page to me.
Well, they got Jim Edmonds.
Yeah, that was also a weird one.
Willie Bloomquist was not playoff eligible. He was back when you could do the waiver thing.
Yeah.
They got him after September 1st. So he was just I don't really understand. He actually was pretty nice, I think, for the Reds. They got someone. I
can't remember.
I can't remember back that far, but yeah, man, fun team. And, even in the playoffs, I mean, I think a lot of people love to talk about Joey Votto in the playoffs. Dude's played nine
playoff at bats?
Yeah, he has 2 weeks worth of at bats. But look at the pitchers that the Reds faced in that series. I mean, come on. And the worst pitcher was Cole Hamels, who was a ridiculously tough left-handed pitcher. So yeah, I mean, I think I still bitter about that season is how the Reds kind of like waffled it at the end of the year when they could have potentially been the 2 seed.
Yeah, played the
And
Braves, who were the wild card.
Yeah, I played the Braves, and the Braves looked really bad in that postseason too, and would have been a much better match. The Reds would have been the home team. Yeah, so you never know how things shake out.
Yeah, I'll never forget when because the Astros were brutal that year, and the Phillies traded for Roy Oswalt, and I was like, God, because you could see like the Reds were like in the running. You're like, okay, they're likely going to win the division. Because that after this, especially after the sweep against St. Louis, when everyone kind of thought the season was over, they went on that run in the season. But you saw the Phillies were kind of doing the thing, so you're like kind of saw like this last couple weeks, like the Reds are going to play in the Phillies, and you're like, oh, it's Halladay, Oswalt, and you're like, oh no, this is not going to be great.
Yeah, I mean, and they pretty much beat Oswalt.
Yeah, they did.
I mean,
Phillips has a leadoff homer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So one more thing on Votto's 2010 season, as I'm looking through it here. This is insane. I don't know if I ever heard this before. So Votto had a 904 OPS in April. He had a 1000 OPS every single month the rest of the season. He did not have one month where he was below a 1000 OPS from May on.
That's wild.
Yeah, I mean, just wow, that's incredible. Yeah. Whew. July, he slugged 702, hit 9 bombs in 25 games, which is nothing for 2021 Joey Votto. But
so here's the guys that Votto beat out for the MVP in 2010. Albert Pujols was second in voting.
Yeah,
he had 279 points. Votto had 443 voting points. Carlos Gonzalez, who people might forget was a freaking really good ball player.
Yeah,
for a while. Ubaldo Hernandez won the Cy Young that year for Colorado, and Adrian Gonzalez was fourth with his tenure with the Padres. Toy Tulowitzki was fifth. Roy Halladay was sixth, and I'm not going to sit here and talk about Aubrey Huff, who was seventh, because he's a awful human being. But yeah, so Votto was beating those dudes out for MVP that year. So yeah, and obviously we know how the next year goes and all that stuff, but that's when you kind of start seeing this trend going into 2011. The Reds were really disappointing that year. They were 79 and 83, but that's the year, in that time frame, Votto, it's a second season in a row he leads the league in on base percentage. He had a 947 OPS, which is really pretty darn good still, just not elite like he was the year before and the year after. And then that's his first year he leads the league in walks. And I listened to recently, Jay Bruce was on the Athletic Baseball Show with Ken Rosenthal. And they asked him about playing with Joey. And he's like, we're in spring training one year. And Joey's like in there watching footage of himself. And he's like, I'm trying to figure out how to age better. As my baseball career goes on, that's when he started making the commitment to I just want to get on base any way I possibly can. And that was kind of the beginning of that. That was his second All-Star appearance. That was the year we last bet on the show in the past, where Scott Rowland of being the starting third baseman as the sixth alternate. So yeah, and the Reds were 79 and 83 that year. They brought in World Series MVP Edgar Renteria, and it just never clicked.
That was just a year everyone had a down year. Everyone. Votto was a 947 OPS. That was a little bit down. I guess it's down for Joey standards, but the Reds did not have a single hitter that had above an 820 OPS that year. Phillips was 810, Bruce was 814. Everyone else was a below average hitter. Outside of, I think Chris Heisey actually was really good off the bench. He had that 3 home run game against the Yankees. But even the pitching, oh yeah. It was a doubleheader. I was at the day game they lost. Yeah. But yeah, Bronson Arroyo had a 5.07 ERA. Edin Volquez 5.71. Bailey was 4.43. Cueto was good and Leak was good, but everyone else just completely, underperformed that year. And that's just one of those years. It wasn't the Reds' year. You're gonna have those, and they should have done probably more. They shouldn't have rolled in with the corpse of Edgar Renteria to play shortstop.
And Paul Janisch.
Yeah, I mean, and Scott Rowland that year was a 676 OPS, so he like completely returned to, and that was the beginning of the end for Drew Stubbs. I think poor Stubbs got booed. Maybe that was the next year, but yeah, he got booed a lot, and I probably booed him too, and now I feel bad because I think that's so stupid now.
Zach Kozar comes up and 12 games later gets injured.
Oh yeah, Zach Kozar came up looking like Barry Larkin, and yeah, that was just it wasn't the Reds year. You chalk it up and whatever. But the next year was.
The next year was terrific.
Well, it was, and then it wasn't.
Yeah, right. I just remember like the 2012 hot stove run. I just remember it being like, I was working that day at still the same store that I talked about earlier. And this guy comes in and he goes, "When are you guys getting your Matt Latos jerseys?" And I knew about Latos at the time, being like this up and coming starting pitcher who were like, I had him in fantasy baseball and he was like he was just about anything but a lock for 7 innings. I was like, what are you talking about? Because it was kind of talked about like, the Reds might be getting this guy. And you're like, oh, okay, sure. Like the Reds just made a trade to get Matt Latos. And you're like, huh? And it's like, what'd they give up? And they're like, Alonso, Volquez, Yasmani Grandal, and Brad Boxberger. And I'm like, people are really going to hate that trade, but I like it. And so you're like, okay, cool. I like this. This is nice. And then, they go sign Ryan Madsen, which a lot of people forget. Aroldis Chapman went into that spring training, was supposed to be a starter. And I still think would have been much better for the Reds, but that's neither here nor there. And of course, they trade for Sean Marshall like right before, like I think a couple weeks before spring training, and they sign Ryan Ludwig, and you're like, oh shit, the 2012 Reds are going to be for real.
Yeah, and Ryan Ludwig had a phenomenal year that year. He way outperformed his expectations. But yeah, that was just an incredible year. Start with the Reds that season. The Mother's Day home runs. The Reds were 16-16.
Yeah.
And this is a team that ended up winning.
I was at the game the night before.
97 games. Votto hits that big walk-off grand slam. I think they were down like 9-6, right? Like they needed 4 runs to win.
Not only that, they had a really long rain delay that day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, look, that team had so much talent. They probably would have figured it all out. But, that kind of, it feels like that flipped the switch on that team. And they couldn't lose after that, That's one of those teams that, who knows when the next time the Reds will win 97 games. Like, teams just don't win 97 games very often. Maybe next year, maybe, with all these teams tanking in the NL Central, maybe next year the Reds can kind of go on that run. But yeah, I mean, that team and Votto was like on pace to not like break the Reds double record, but like demolish it. Like he was just hitting doubles every 2 at bats. It was insane. And then he goes down and you thought, oh man, this team's in trouble. And they played better without him. It's just one of those years. It was the exact opposite of 2011. Everything went right during the regular season for the Reds that year.
Yeah, you talk about the fact that Votto was like the double machine that year. He was really, he was hitting really well for power. And this is a time frame where, to put kind of in context, like Nick said, like this team won 97 games, but the 2 guys hitting above Joey Votto in the order were Drew Stubbs and Zach Kozar. So it wasn't like he had people like protecting him in the order. Like it was kind of like up to him a lot of those nights, and he was kind of carrying him. And that Mother's Day game, he has that stretch, and right before, going into that Giants series, and a lot of people swear by it. There's nothing that you can say for sure, but the feeling was kind of like he might win the MVP again. And he was having this tremendous year. He played really well. He started first base in the All-Star game. Like I think he was like the leading vote getter by a ton. At first base that year. It wasn't very close. I think like Alan Craig might have been second like that year, if people remember that name. So Joey gets hurt in the Giants series, sliding in the 3rd, goes and plays the All-Star game. They come out of the All-Star break and they play the Cardinals, who at that point are really good. They sweep the Cardinals. And then the Monday after, Joey goes on the injured list. And so it was like, that Knicks are like, I was like, oh no, this isn't good. And they lose the first game pretty bad after he's hurt. Then Frazier comes in, they put him at first base. Him and, we know the story from there. Him and Scott Rowland have this like crazy stretch. The Reds went 10 in a row. Marty Brennaman shaves his head, all that fun stuff that people talk about all the time. But from there, Joey comes back and he doesn't, I don't think he hit a homer after he came back, but he's getting the ball in the outfield. He's, getting some hits and kind of like really kind of starts to kind of feel like he's kind of getting his groove. And then of course we know the Giants series happens.
Yeah. People I think forget that Votto had a 500 on base percentage in that series.
Yeah. He hit 390.
Yeah. 389, 500, he didn't have a single extra base hit, but he literally got on base every other time he came up. So, that was, and he was clearly not 100%. I doubt he was 50%, if he wasn't hitting any extra, base hits. But yeah, I mean, he gave everything he could. He had a great series, it's just, I don't want to dwell too much on that. Just one of those things, just it didn't happen for the Reds. And, hopefully the Reds are on the other end of that. Hopefully the Reds are the Giants one of these years where they're not the team that should win. They're not the team that should go on to win the World Series. And it just happens to be the Reds. I mean, I doubt many Giants fans, when they went to the playoffs that year, said, yeah, we're winning the World Series this year. We got this in the bag.
Barry Zito was in their rotation that year.
Yeah. The game 4 starter. Yeah. Yeah. It's just, one of those things. But Votto, 500 on base percentage in that series, he did his part.
Yeah, he did for sure. And, unfortunately Buster Posey goes on to win the MVP that year while he crushes our souls.
Entire souls. Yeah.
Yeah. You remember like the dumb, this is kind of when they started seeing the city kind of start to do this thing where they're kind of turning on Joey. Like you said, the louder voices. And people are like, well, he didn't hit any home runs. Has he lost his power? This and that, blah, blah, blah. And you go in the spring, he doesn't hit a home run the first, I think 3 weeks of the 2013 season. But again, they go and get Shin-Soo Choo. And it's like, oh my God, we have someone in front of Votto who can finally get on base. And the Choo Votto connection is one of my all-time favorite Reds duos ever in a lineup.
Yeah. Choo and Votto were just so fun together. That felt like the first year that the fan base turned on Votto.
Yeah.
I feel like, everything up to that point, 2012, he was hurt. There's an explanation. And honestly, he probably was hurt in 2013. I doubt he was 100% that whole year. But yeah, that's when the voices really started, coming out. I remember, I won't say his name. There was a Reds reporter that year went on the MLB network. I remember watching it live, and they asked him, who would you say is the National League Central MVP? And he said, I'd probably go McCutchen, Molina, and Brandon Phillips. And let's just for the disrespect that was. So that season, Brandon Phillips had a 706 OPS. Votto finished the year at 926. And I don't think there was any sort of fluky end of the year numbers that flipped either one. They were pretty much that's kind of the hitter they were. And this is no disrespect to Brandon Phillips, got a really good Hall of Fame Reds career. But just that was appreciated. But what Votto did, Votto finished at 926 OPS, not his greatest year, but still an elite year. Just that was when it was hard. And that was when the Reds announced that Barry Larkin was coming on to be the color analyst. I was like, oh no. I immediately went back and I found it. He was on a Sunday Night Baseball game against the Dodgers, and he straight out says Joey needs to drive in more runs. He needs and just added on to that. And to Barry's credit, Barry has been an incredible advocate for Joey Votto, even when Joey Votto was struggling earlier in 2021 this year. Barry, and I don't think it was because he was looking at the StatCast numbers, but Barry was saying, oh, he's hitting the ball hard. He's, so a lot of credit to Barry Larkin for that. And I wonder if some of the fan base is seeming to come back around. Some of the, like, as Mo said when he was on our show, seems like most of the holdovers are starting to kind of, turn back around. I wonder if Barry has something to do with that. Barry kind of giving his stamp of approval, on Joey Votto's Hall of Fame career.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's helped.
Yeah, I hope so. Because we saw, obviously we talked about this with the Brennemans, they didn't really help Joey's reputation with the fan base, and they were kind of guys who went after the whole thing with Votto and why Brandon Phillips should be there. And Phillips had like 100 RBI that year, but he also had the two leaders in National League and on base percentage in front of him, so that was kind of wild.
I think he led the league in double plays too.
Yeah,
grounded into.
No one talks about that part, obviously.
Yeah,
I was actually at that Sunday night baseball game you talked about too, the Dodgers one, when Cozart has the Cozart he scores a winning run from first in that game.
Yeah, I think Hannigan hit the ball down the line.
Yeah, I was at that game. That was pretty cool. So I'm glad I didn't hear Barry say that. But yeah, like you said, I think definitely Barry's kind of helped lead the fan base to kind of really appreciating him again. And then obviously there's the playoff game, the 1-game wild card playoff where the Reds make the playoffs, which is awesome. Bailey Hamilton comes up. There's this electricity that they got, the super fast guy that people think is going to be really good. And again, we kind of fall down that again. And Johnny Cueto obviously gets the ball in the 1-game wild card against the Pittsburgh Pirates. Cueto battled injury a lot that year, which was kind of sucked because I thought he was going to be tremendous coming off his 2012 season. And then, we all know what happens in Pittsburgh that night.
Should have been Homer Bailey. Homer Bailey dominated the Pirates. He got too cute. But yeah, I mean, Votto went over 4 in that game. But I mean, he's facing Liriano, who was really lefty, really difficult.
He was awesome that year.
He's a brutal matchup for the Reds. The Reds had Chu and Votto, both guys who that year had really drastic splits. Votto was still a good hitter against left-handed pitching, but he wasn't the elite Joey Votto hitter against left-handed pitching. And that was just a tough matchup for the Reds, and and get down early, and it was one of those. It wasn't meant to be.
Yeah, never will ever forget when people said I would much rather be playing with Brandon Phillips and Joey Votto because of that one game. It was like, then go somewhere else because I don't want to hear this. Yeah, which also leads to Dusty Baker losing his job or didn't renew his contract or whatever it was at the time. And Chu leaves, signs with the Rangers. And I think at this point, like Todd Frazier's kind of hitting fourth in the order behind Joey. Jay Bruce is kind of up and down. Brian Price gets the job as the manager of the Reds, and they have a really good first half of the 2014 season. Joey's hitting pretty well. I think that was the year he got hurt and he missed like 100 games. Do I have that wrong?
Yeah. He only played 62 games that year.
Yeah. So Joey gets hurt, misses like the whole second half of the year. Phillips is hurt at the time, but there's still 7 games or so above 500 going into the All-Star break. They come out of the All-Star break and play the Yankees and just have a total meltdown without Joey. And it just was kind of one of those, once again, really brutal years. It kind of kicked into the time for the rebuild, or as they say.
Yeah. They should have started the rebuild. Instead, they waited until 2015. Yeah, that was Votto's worst slug year of his career. 409 was the worst. 2019 was his worst OPS year, but he was only 799 that year. So, yeah, I mean, he was clearly battling injuries, only hit 6 home runs, only had 16 doubles. Even that was the only year that he was below a 400 on base percentage from 2009 to 2018. And we're talking like most of those years were like up in like the 430s, 450s, and he was down to 390. So he clearly, wasn't right that year. So we could just, skip that year. It's not really, it wasn't.
Yeah.
wasn't healthy.
And in 2015, I remember like he got off to that really slow start, didn't make the All-Star game. Marty Brennaman goes on the air and says, let's just face it, Joey Votto is not an elite baseball player anymore. And then he goes crazy.
I think that was 2017 he said that.
Oh, was it?
I could be wrong, but I think it was in 2000. I think that was 2007. Although he might have said it twice.
Yeah, would you shock you?
It's possible. But yeah, that was, I think, Votto's maybe one of his most underrated year. Finished with exactly 1,000 OPS, 459 on base percentage, 29 bombs that year. Yeah, that was just an incredible year for a team that looked completely different at the end of the year than the beginning of the year. I mean, that was a team that traded a lot of pieces. Bruce got traded at the deadline, or no? Bruce made it to. Did Bruce make it to 2016? Yeah, Bruce made it to 2016. Yeah. But yeah, that was a different team. You know, they had the All-Star game. Votto didn't play in the All-Star game in Cincinnati. Oh,
yeah, I was there.
But yeah, he just had a monster second half, and one of the best years of his career. Led the league in walks, 143. Yeah, finished third in the MVP.
Yeah, because they didn't want to trade Johnny Cueto because they didn't want him pitching in the All-Star game for another team, and Johnny Cueto didn't make the All-Star game.
Makes sense.
Yeah, that was great. And then of course Cueto goes to the Royals for a half a year and wins the World Series. Still one of the weirdest things ever. But yeah, so in 2016, another ridiculous Joey Votto year. I think that year too, he also had like a really long, slow start to the year where I think like at the end of May, he was really kind of slumping. And was it June on that he kind of like got into a groove and went kind of crazy?
Yeah, 640 OPS in April, 818 in May, and then over 1,000 every month. The rest in July, August, and September were all over 1,100 OPSs. Like that is his OPS for the second half of the season was 1,158. That's insanity.
Yeah, you don't see that too often, is what we're getting at here.
Yeah, that was just a monster season.
He was 7th in MVP that year.
Yeah, probably, probably should have been
Chris
higher,
Bryant.
but that's just, one of those that, just it's tough on a bad team,
Yeah. Daniel Murphy was second in voting that year. Nolan Arenado was 5th.
Daniel Murphy was second in an MVP vote.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
tells you everything. Yeah.
That's wild.
It's really weird. I know. So at this point, kind of talking about, if you kind of hear the theme, the Reds are obviously not a very good ball club. Not really handling things very well as far as like the acquisitions they're making. It doesn't really make us feel like they're trying to win by any means. Skip Schumacher is like a big offseason signing at one year during this whole stretch. Like Nick said, like all these guys are traded. All these guys are traded for like prospects that were like everyone's excited about, and those guys don't play very well. Billy Hamilton is rough. Who was the guy they got from the Mets for Bruce? That was like one of their top prospects, and he was
Dielson Herrera.
That's right. Yeah, Dielson Herrera. Scott Schebler ended up being an all right player for the Reds for a little while. They got him in the Todd Frazier 3-way trade where they also got Jose Peraza. I think I have that right. And Peraza was decent, had a couple good years for them, but 17 Joey Votto. We've said this on the show many of times. He was on a really bad baseball team, but should have been the MVP. Loses it to Giancarlo Stanton by the closest of margins. Stanton also on a brutal Marlins team that I think were worse than the Reds, if I remember correctly, by win-loss. And Joey kind of has like this interview where he's like, how cool was that? He's like, I know I lost. He's like, but I lost by the closest of margins. I think it was literally the closest in baseball history was the MVP vote that year. But the year that Joey had that year where it was like, that team was pretty bad, obviously. But every night, he was kind of giving them something and it made you feel like he alone made them feel like he had a chance. They had a chance to win most nights.
Yeah, that was just an incredible season. Such a shame a year like that was wasted, such a shame, 16, 15, 16 and 17 were just, wasted years. But yeah, I mean, he was just a monster that year, led the league in on base percentage at 454,
454.
led the league in OPS at 1032. Played all 162 games that year.
Yeah.
Just one of the more a season you won't see, a season you really won't see. I mean, I know the Reds have like 5 guys like this year that are having great years, but I'm not going to see a season like that very often.
Yeah, it's few and far between for sure. And Joey did not start in the All-Star game that year. That was the year Zach Cozart did with the infamous "I'll buy a donkey."
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That was a 2-1 extra innings All-Star game.
Oof.
Rough. Yeah, not very good. And then the next year, of course, 2018, Joey's last All-Star year, plays 145 games, leads the league in on-base percentage again at 417. I can't believe it's his last All-Star season, but kind of goes back to obviously still really good, especially at age 34. But the team still is pretty bad. Doesn't look like they're going to get much better. They were 67 and 95 that year. That was the year Brian Price got fired if they started 3-15. And once again, Zach Cozart's left at this point. So it's up to Billy Hamilton and Joey Votto to lead the offense. And wow.
Yeah. That was the year that it kind of started looking like, Joey Votto was starting to decline. Still led the league in on base percentage at 417. What a hell of a decline,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the OPS was down. Only hit 12 home runs that year, which was interesting. So a point on Joey Votto. This is one of the biggest pet peeves I have about the All-Star game is it's so rewarding for guys who have big first halves. And Joey Votto's had a lot of years where he had monster second halves. So that's one thing that I don't love about the All-Star game. I think I mentioned it on here before. That's why when I select players, I start their stats when I'm selecting it from the first day of the second half the year before through the current season. And I feel like that kind of gives you a better understanding of the players. And yeah, I mean, it's just Votto's only been in 6 All-Star games. That's criminal.
Yeah, it is criminal. Yeah, I'm like looking at the lineup that year. So that was Tucker, Joey, Scooter Gennett, Jose Peraza, Eugenio Suarez, Adam Duvall, Billy Hamilton, Scott Schebler.
It was a fun team for a team that lost 95 games. They had some good moments.
Yeah.
For sure. One moment that sticks out for me, it was a game that I was at that year. Reds are playing the Indians up here in Cleveland, and they were down 4-1, I think, entering the 9th. And it was like that 2010 get Votto to the plate, and they got him to the plate, and he drove in a big double, cleared the bases, put the Reds atop. There were 2 outs in that inning. But yeah, he's still, even that year was, kind of starting to see, some of maybe the decline. He still had some really, really big moments that season.
Yeah, he did. Absolutely. So we go to the next year being 2019. This is David Bell's first year. The team starts 1-8. And, Joey's kind of at this point trying to find. So he was, obviously he's 35 at this time. He plays 142 games that year. Of course, my phone is going to go against me here. Thanks, Baseball Reference. 357 on base, 768 OPS. And has a couple games where he like kind of DHs, like they kind of like when they're playing in the American League, but really kind of the first, like, I wouldn't say, like you kind of the second year of his decline, but kind of the voices of, oh my God, we're paying this guy this much, which is so stupid. But kind of starting to see like people were starting to wonder, is this time for Joey to age? For the Reds to kind of look at their next options. Should they be platooning him? He had a really rough start to that year. Nick Senzel just came up that year. They had Derek Dietrich, and people were in love with him for, he was pretty fun for 2 months. People were kind of asking, should they have Derek Dietrich play first base over Joey Votto? Was a real conversation that was people were having that I can't believe. But yeah, so kind of a fun team, Puig was on the team that year. Matt Kemp was there for, 7 games or so. It was something.
Yeah, that was a really fun team. I thought a team that doomed themselves with a bad start, never had a chance really, to dig themselves out. But yeah, I think if they would have started better, I mean, I think that's a team that could have at least made it interesting towards the end of the year. And again, that was also, I know they stumbled in September, but I think like Votto and Senzel, they kind of had a lot of guys just say, hey, call it a season. You have some nagging injuries or whatever. That team played really, really well. Keno came up and
yeah,
tore up. But that team in like, June, July, August kind of had the like 2009 vibes, like, hey, this thing's finally turning around. But yeah, I mean, that was kind of the year where it looked like, okay, maybe it's not going to be a gradual decline like we had hoped. It looks like it's going to be steep. And I mean, there's some realistic conversations, but yeah, as I know, as we talked with Mo, I mean, Votto more than paid for all of his contract. He whether you think, if it doesn't matter if you think players are worth that amount of money or not, based on what other players have been paid, he had already earned it all. I mean, you look at some of the other contracts around baseball of guys that have not earned, or maybe not earned, but have not produced like you would have expected for the contract. Joey Votto has. Like, he's already done that. So really, once we got into the 2018, anything he did the rest of the way was pretty much gravy. You hope he can continue to be productive, but he had already given you what you paid for.
Yeah, I mean, I bring up the reference of Miguel Cabrera all the time, who, I know was a Triple Crown winner and won MVPs, definitely earned his contract, as we say, but the last 5-6 years of Miggy have been pretty rough.
Yeah. I mean, even a guy who I really like, and I, it wasn't his fault, but Homer Bailey,
yeah,
his contract was half as much, and he was, got hurt and never really gave the Reds really much at all, So I just, I mean, I wish people could, just kind of think, okay, it's already been paid for. It's paid off. Like, yeah, maybe the house doesn't look as good, now, but it's paid off. Like, stop worrying about it.
Yeah, like, you don't write the checks, so it's not your place. Is the point that I like to make. And then of course last year, 2020, is the COVID shortened season. The Reds do make the playoffs at 31-29. They lose the series to the Braves, where they couldn't score a run. But Joey has this stretch where he kind of like takes a couple days off, in the middle of the shortened season, and hits pretty well for the that after he comes back and gets in the lineup regularly, helps the Reds get into the postseason. Had an okay game, that game 1 against the Braves. I know he had one point where he had the runners on. He didn't bring him in, but they lost 1-0 in extras. It was just kind of a thing where things didn't go their way. But I don't think it was necessarily Joey's fault that they lost by any means. And of course, I know it's like not a ton to talk about with that season, but it was great to see them play playoff baseball again, even if it was extended. I still appreciated it.
Yeah. In that game 1, Votto led off the 13th with a hit. Actually got a rally started. Reds, I think he kind of had a base running gaff or something like that. But yeah, he performed pretty well in those series. Got on base 3 times, which for the Reds didn't get on base like at all. And he found his way on 3 times. Yeah, I mean, he had a. And who knows how that would have been remembered if the Reds would have gone on. I don't really know. Do Dodgers fans really treasure that? I don't really know. It's just such a weird season. The end of the year was awesome, and Votto was incredible down the stretch. That one game against the Brewers, it was the third game of the 3-game series where it kind of put the Reds in the driver's seat going past that. Votto hit a massive home run, I think off Brandon Woodruff.
Yeah.
Who was good, who was really good that year. Now we know really how good he is. He was incredible down the stretch, and that was when it started flipping. Okay, all right, yeah, maybe there's still some left in the tank here.
Yeah, which brings us to this year, where obviously he's having this tremendous year. He talked about changing his approach. You see now that he's hitting 4th in the order behind 2 All-Stars. But even though he's changed his approach as far as being more aggressive at the plate, being more aggressive in the strike zone, he's still drawing walks. He's still helping his team a lot. Was just National League Player of the Month. Had that incredible stretch of 10 home runs in 10 days. It's really been spectacular. To put it one way or another. He's not. I know he's not the Joey Votto of old, that 2010 to 2013 era, 2016 era, but still to be producing at this level at his age. I mean, you think about like age 37 going to 38 years for Reds guys like Griffey was an all-star at age 37 and had a good year at the plate, but was not very good defensively. I know Joe Morgan, had a pretty good career going into his later years, and like around baseball, besides like Barry Bonds, it's not often that a guy at 37, 38 hits the way Joey has this year.
Yeah, and it's the way he's being productive for me. That's just the most cool part of it. His on base percentage, and I know, I'm not going to say what it is because by the time people watch, it's going to be completely,
right,
different. But his on base percentage, when I'm looking at this, is above where it was the last couple years when he was kind of still more in that old Joey Votto on base machine, which was super productive and super successful. But he kind of had to, all right, hey, I'm going to strike out. It's not a big deal. I just got to accept it. And he's actually still been able to get on base about the same amount. Probably more from pitchers, maybe having more, be more fearful of him, having to be more careful pitching to him. It just kind of results in more walks that way, as opposed to having to grind out these walks as much. But just the power that he's shown, it's incredible. And it really goes back to just the way that he's kept himself, in shape. You see some of these other 37-year-olds, 38-year-olds on the back end of these contracts that already have everything paid. They aren't in as good a shape as Mr. Votto is.
Right.
And Votto plays first base. You can kind of get away with a little bit more, but it's really a testament to him for the work that he's put in to stay at this level and to, kind of jump back into it. But yeah, I mean, man, as we're down to these, last couple years, we probably have 2 more, realistically looking at it after this year. Man, just cherish it. And when Votto's on one of these runs like he's been on of late, man, it's special. And you're not gonna, you're not gonna have another player like Joey Votto again. And I know me and Tim will be there in Cooperstown.
Yes, we will.
And if he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer, I will be tweeting every single writer that didn't vote for him every single day, telling them how dumb they are, in the nicest way possible. Probably not. I'll probably just be livid. Someone probably better take my phone if he's not on a first ballot. But yeah, it's just what an incredible career. And we haven't really talked about just the change of personalities of Joey to just become this guy that embraces the social aspect of the game, the the marketing side. I wonder if Joey would have been this player or been this personality back in 2009, 2010. And look, that wasn't who Joey was then. There's nothing you could do about it. That's fine. I wonder what his marketability would have been like then. Would Joey Votto kind of have been a more, famous athlete to where people on the Dan Patrick show aren't saying dumb things about him, just because he kind of got, pigeonholed into this hole that he's this shy guy that doesn't, really have much of a personality. But anyone who's a Reds fan that's watched him the last 5 or 6 years knows, wow, this guy's, one of the most, well-spoken and athletes that has fun and genuinely gives you the content as a fan that you want out of a player.
Yeah, because you remember, like you mentioned, like, would he be this way? In 2010, he had a SportsCenter commercial. Do you remember that?
Yeah, but it was forced. Like, that was forced.
Yeah, it was definitely like, it was, the Reds were like kind of an attractive team. They were getting hot. And they're like, well, we have the mascot here. So like, it was like, yeah, okay. And then of course he has the intentional talk in 2013 where he dresses as the Mountie. And that gets kind of people laughing. I remember I think it was that summer. Say what you will about Lance McAllister. I know he's not everyone's favorite. But they did this thing where every week Joey would go on his show, because I guess he was kind of like leaning more into like, I want people to know more about me. And was like every week was going on there and like talking about different things and just talk about like different things in sports. And he talked in there about, idolizing Kobe Bryant and really appreciating that Kobe Bryant played for one franchise his whole career. And it was right when that Richard Sherman thing happened, like when the Seahawks went to the Super Bowl, and he talked about how he appreciated like his emotion and things like that. And it was pretty cool because it was kind of him opening that door. At that time, he had started the Joey Votto Foundation, which was awesome. Really cool thing. I know it didn't end up working out forever, but I don't think it's anything where he just would quit on it by any means. Again, another thing stupid Cincinnati fans were mad at him for, that they never donated $1 to. But yeah, I think this new energetic, fun Ted Lasso referencing, going on the Dan Patrick show, and joking around with about with Dan, the fact that Dan's from Mason, and talk about how he never had Skyline. He kind of stays away from the conversation, and just having fun. And I think the moment that kind of opened people's eyes to this new attitude of Joey Votto was, of course, the Brewers game when they swept them, and he scores from first to give them a 2-1 lead, and he's just going wild, like pointing at Barnhart at third, because Barnhart advanced to third on the throw, and just kind of like, you're like, all right, this is pretty freaking cool. This is awesome.
Yeah, it's Joey Votto, just a guy who's constantly evolved as a baseball player, as a person, as a personality. It's just that's why those of us who love him, that's why we love him, man. Just because he's just he's a larger than life figure. And I'm sure, my son's 2 right now. I'm sure that I will cram down his throat how great Joey Votto is, and the old man talking about this great player that played in his era. And like Reds fans do with the Big Red Machine.
Yeah.
Like, rightfully so. I mean, those were their guys. I hope with everything in me, not just for me as a Reds fan who desperately needs the Reds to have some success in the playoffs. I'm not even saying win a World Series. It would be so cool if
win a series.
If Votto could go on a run in the playoffs. I think if you get Votto to the playoffs, I don't want to jinx it. I feel like he's ready. I feel like he's just gonna have one of those moments. Man, it just would be so cool for him to really get that moment that is you rewatch over and over again, that you show for decades.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at this point, man, everything within the Reds should be get Joey a ring, or at least get Joey Votto a chance again,
Yeah, because I remember when they were kind of going through the rebuild and they was kind of stalling on getting better. like in spring training, he would have this conversation where he's like, I'm tired of losing. He's like, I'm sick of it. I'm paraphrasing, of course. He's like, but
Yeah.
I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to lose like this. He's like, I want to be here, but I want to win. And when he did that interview in the offseason with Jim Day for Jim Day's pod, he was like, I'm embarrassed to say, like, it was the first time I played winning baseball in a long time. Again, paraphrasing. I can't quote the man for anything specifically, but on the field, I think, like you said, like it feels like he's ready. And you're seeing thanks to my friendship with you and doing this show, you've taught me a lot about the Baseball Savant page and looking through that and just seeing like how he compares to the rest of the league on like average exit velocity, max exit velocity, hard hit percentage, just kind of learning more about what that means and what he's doing, just kind of makes you appreciate more and more. And for those who don't know what I'm talking about, Baseball Savant compares current like players to like the rest of the league in their percentile. But we remember, Joey Votto in his prime for being elite was the guy who hit the ball over the field. And his 2021 spray chart looks pretty similar to those days as far as hitting the ball everywhere in the field.
Yeah, I mean, the StatCast numbers say he should be better than what he's done, which has just been incredible.
Wild.
Wild. You think, oh yeah, 37-year-old Joey Votto, he's got a 900 something OPS. There's probably a lot of luck in that. He probably got a lot of things to fall. No, he had terrible luck in April, and he's still just done this, and that's just it's so awesome. I mean, just
blast.
And he knows it too. He said in an interview, he when he had the 10 home run game, my first home run was like a .90 expected batting average, and my last one was a 990. Just that's baseball, I think that's awesome that he knows those numbers. I like to think, at midnight when I'm on baseballsavant.com, Joey's on there too, looking at the same thing.
Yeah, the first homer hit in the stretch I was at the game because my wife took me. It was my birthday. And I had this really awesome day. I was like, the only thing that would make my day perfect, babe, would be if Joey Votto hit a home run for me today. And sure enough, he hits one. I was like, and then hits one after that. And after that, and of course, the Cubs series. MLB The Show gave him a special Diamond Dynasty 99 overall Joey Votto player. I know you play the show, but we don't do that. It's a rabbit hole. I highly suggest not going down it. But yes, like Nick said, so I was really excited to be able to do this. I know we just want to have something up for you all while we're gone, while Nick's enjoying vacation with his family. So I hope you guys really like this. We might do more of this because we're looking at what we're going to do in the off season. So let us know what you think of this episode, how you like it, what you want more of. We definitely really enjoy, Nick and I are never going to turn down an opportunity to turn on our mics and talk about Joey Votto because of what he's meant to us as fans by any means. And especially, as much as we would love to have Carlos here to kind of tell us about like his time with Joey and like their friendship and stuff, which is cool. We we'll have to wait for that for another day, I guess. But Nick, thanks for this, man. I hope you are enjoying your vacation. And when you come back, I can't wait to hopefully be talking about a very important series where the Reds have a good set against the Brewers in Milwaukee.
Yeah, Nick, I hope you're enjoying your vacation too as this airs. And we'll be back next week, the 25th. We're gonna have a late show because the Reds will be in Milwaukee. Ooh, going on right after a game in Milwaukee, an 8-10 game. So we'll probably go on about 11 o'clock. But yeah, we'll have a live show for you guys next week. Hope you guys will join in for that. Hopefully we're talking about good things at that point. Yeah, but Tim, I had a lot of fun doing this with you, my man.
Yeah, man, it was a blast. Everyone, have a good night. 5-star reviews and Apple Podcast, please. There's a lot of way for us. And as always, go Reds.
See ya.
Yeah.